Record. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. This is our Thursday morning production call, and we got a good one lined up for y'all today. If y'all were on the national call, man, we just heard of someone writing like, what do they write? 167,000 or something like that in production, deposited $83,000 on their own personal PIN. Can you do this at a very, very, very high success? Absolutely, you can. And we're going to give you some really good nuggets because in our organization, Elijah, what'd you write last month?
Just over 55 grand.
$55,000 last month, and deposited how much?
It ended up being just over 30.
That is insane. $30,000 in deposits for the month on your own personal PIN. I love to talk about stuff like this because the potential here, what you can do is insane. And man, we're just scratching the surface. So let me start with, again, right? This is our Thursday morning production call. It's an hour long. I want to make sure y'all benefit the most you can out of it. That means get your ROI on the hour invested on this call. Highly suggest you got a notepad, get a pen, take lots of notes. We're going to give you a whole bunch of nuggets today. And it's not about implementing them all. It's about grabbing one or two things and just adding it to your business today, right? And that's the hard part, right? We're usually not doing some of these things, and it's as simple as just adding one or two of these things every single time. We're going to record it so you can hear this over and over, right? Don't worry about changing your entire process. That's not what we're teaching you. We're just giving you a couple of nuggets to add to what you're doing. Right. And I promise you, if you do, you're going to start helping more families. You're going to start making more deposits. That is the point of today's call is how do we increase your deposits? And then the biggest thing is if any of these nuggets help you right in a home or write more business, help more families, if y'all can post it on Band, we humbly do this together as the cook master hierarchy, right? And trust me, if it helped you, it's going to help another agent. So we just humbly ask you post, hey, this is what I'm doing and it helped me, so we can all learn and get better together. So today, what we really want to focus on is how to maximize and how to get better as a producer, how to deposit more money into our bank accounts, right? Because think about this, right? Like Elijah, you deposited 30 grand, but it's because you just made a bigger impact in the families. Right? 55,000 in production equals how many families did you help last month?
I mean, it was over 30.
Right. And that's what we're doing, right? We're just creating a bigger impact in the home and being able to help more families. In return, we get paid more. Right. And so I always love to remind folks, right? Like we sell life insurance, and right, we get paid to do the heavy liftings emotionally. Right. So it's having tough conversations. In case you don't know, we got to talk about death, right? There's just some better tactics to use or words to say versus, hey, if you die, right? If you're not here tomorrow, and it's having those tough conversations and helping them, right, realize their situation of how we help and how we impact more. And one of the things I think, so I want to walk y'all through a journey, right? And Elijah, me and you went through this. And a lot of our new agents don't have that opportunity. So even though it's better than it's ever been,
true,
because it's better than it's ever been, they also don't have some of the stuff that we had to go through that helped us get better. So I want y'all to write this down. It was a term we used to use back in the day, and it was called a rolling university.
Yep.
I know y'all have never heard of a rolling university, but a rolling university was we were training while we were driving to families' homes every single day. Yep. And this was a huge advantage, right, Elijah? Because we were literally training every day, all day. Like, dude, we were trying to run 6 appointments in a day because that's all we can fit, because we had to put 45 minutes to 30 minutes in between each home. Yep. But in between that, Elijah, right, we had to listen to SoundCloud audios.
Yep.
And so what I want to hit on is right now we have this production call. Man, I'd love to say it was the greatest, but trust me, I'm not that good, right? Like I wish 1 hour a day would make y'all the best producers ever, but the reality is it's not, right? And even bigger, I want y'all to realize practicing this skill 1 hour a week in this production call is not going to make you a better producer that fast, right? Think about it. You're only working on your craft once a week. So I always like to talk about sports and stuff, right? Like, an NBA player, a professional in their craft, they don't practice once a week for 1 hour, right? They actually practice every single day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
And it just made me realize, Elijah, right? Like, we were born into that world because we had to drive to families' homes, right?
In other states.
In other states, right? So we had like hours of training,
Bro, I
right?
mean, I drove some days, man, 4 hours one way to go get to these people's houses. And I know you did the same. I remember Chris told me stories where he would actually fly to other states to go run appointments. And I was like, bro, that's insane. Yeah, it's literally it's night and day how different the company looks now as far as what the job entails for the everyday agent. But one advantage we had, man, was, I mean, if we're on the road for 4 hours, you and I, we weren't listening to music or a podcast for 4 hours. We were calling carriers. We were listening to these audio trainings, calling agents. We were working the whole time we were driving. And the main perk of that is we got good quicker because of how much time we spent in a given week or a given month or our first 90 days learning how to get good at this.
Yeah.
Summit
So
never existed. Summit didn't exist. HQ didn't exist. So the SNA training call didn't exist. The production call didn't exist. All this stuff now that we have is the byproduct of the training that we did that enables us to be able to teach it effectively. So
what we're going to give y'all today is just best practices and things and right things you can plug into. Again, right, what I want y'all to take out of this call is 1 hour a day in our or 1 hour a week on this production call is not going to get you to better producing, right? As fast as y'all want to go, right? Because I know all of us want to start making $5,000 this week, right? And that just means we're helping more families. And so I'm going to give you some nuggets, and we're going to give y'all some nuggets, right, on things that we have constantly plugged into, things we still plug into, right? So write these down. This is an interactive call. Please feel free to unmute yourself as long as it's topic related, right? We want to make sure we're answering all the questions on how to maximize your production and things we did that helped us out throughout our journey, right? And with things we're still doing, right? And that's one of the biggest things, right, Elijah? We never stop training on our personal prodution.
no,
Because
before this call, I was on the sales deep dive call, bro.
right, and it's because we're everyone, we go up and down, right? Like this week, Elijah, my show rate sucked, right? So this week I'm like, hey, let me work on my show rate, right? So I start focusing on locking it down, doing this, right? But in focusing on that, hey, you know what? I probably get a little bit weak in the home and the script, right? So next week I'm going to go work on my script, right? And just realize, again, NBA players, you never stop training, right? And the really cool part is you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars here a year. That is absolutely worth every single dollar of training.
Oh, for
Right?
sure.
We make more than doctors with a $300 license.
Isn't that crazy?
I can't say that enough. We make more than doctors on a $300 license. Now, here's the thing. The $300 license is not going to make you $300,000 a year. You have to go and train yourself through the process, right? And pay your tuition. Now, the cool part is the tuition is not $100,000, $200,000 in debt, Elijah, out of college. It's just time.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hours that you invest on yourself on production calls, on SoundCloud audios, and things that we're going to give y'all today, right? That will get you to a $300,000, a $200,000 deposit year. Because I'm telling y'all right now, the way the system's built, if you're a full-time producer, your goal should be over $200,000 in deposits. There is just no way that you are not, as a full-time agent, depositing $200,000 because it is too good right now. Right now, Elijah, it's going to take some work, right?
Oh yeah, it's a recipe, man, and we call that the system. And I would encourage you, like, if you don't know what that recipe is, well, we're gonna break it down in detail. But one of the key components. I mean, the topic too reminds me of the book of the month, bro. The Slight Edge talks about getting a little bit better every single day. And then over time, the progress is really noticeable, but you're not going to notice the change or the results right away. Like part of the Slight Edge is the component of time. And you're looking at Joe and I now, and like you're impressed with a month's worth of results that took us 6 years to get good enough to be able to do that.
Oh, remember those first years? There was a lot of phone
Dude,
calls back and forth.
hell yeah, dude. It was harder, and we didn't have as much training, and so it took more. It also like it forced us to. That's why I went to conference was to go get the training. And
Right?
so, and we did it every 6 months, not every year. And we went every 6 months, right? We would go fly wherever it is. But anyways, I think it comes down to massive action, constant correction. So like if I were to describe, hey, if you suck at sales right now, some of you probably do, and that's okay. I definitely did as well. You'll learn what you need to work on the more you do this. And so for me, the first thing that I needed to learn was the script. And so I focused on memorizing that. This was like the first piece of my training. I'm talking super basics, okay? Learning what to say when you call people. In addition to that, you have to learn how to run an appointment. And something I would encourage you guys to go listen to. It's the very same training that Joe and I did. It was on SoundCloud. If you don't have SoundCloud on your phone, I'm going to give you guys specific trainings you could go listen to and turn your car into a rolling university when you're sitting in the school pickup line, or you're driving to the gym or the grocery store, or you're going to the gym. Bro, there was like 6 months I didn't listen to music when I first came on to Symmetry. All I listened to were these trainings. So, and I'm curious what you would recommend too, Joe, but there's three that I really think are the most beneficial. One is mastering the phones with the masters. So if you get SoundCloud on your phone, go download it, and you search Symmetry Financial Group, you'll see all these trainings. One I would recommend is called Mastering the Phones with the Masters. Another one is it's called In the Home with Ashley Tarr. In the Home with Ashley Tarr. And then the third one is called It All Starts on the Phone. It All Starts on the Phone by Sarah Pappas. Those three, I think, were the most transformational for me. And I listened to those at least 20 to 30 times a piece over the course of like my first year getting started here. Would you add anything to that, Joe?
It's all those same ones. And for me, the biggest one was emotional labor.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Emotional labor changed my thought process of how I ran my appointment, right? Still all the same techniques, but what I was looking to do or accomplish in that home, right? So like an NBA player, their goal is to score more points, right? That's how they're going to win their game. And for us is to draw out more emotion and have more difficult conversations and have more uncomfortable conversations, because it is an emotional sale. So when I listen to emotional labor, right, because we don't do physical labor, we do emotional labor. And dude, it was just a huge eye opener. So ever since then, right, like I embrace the difficult conversation and the difficult question, right? Like I am looking for what I call, right, is poking the bear, right? Because of that SoundCloud, I'm saying stuff like, well, because of the cancer, this is what we're going to look at for you, right? Versus shying away from it. Guess what? We're going to have a very uncomfortable conversation because you're not that healthy. And this is why it's even more important, right? Or because of the budget we just looked at. So it looks like, Aaron, so it looks like you pass away, we're $4,000 negative on making sure we can pay all our bills, right? Like I don't shy away from any, like I wouldn't call it insulting, right? Again, I call it poking the bear, right? Because it's a very emotional conversation, right? And it was tough for me mindset wise, Elijah. One of the biggest things that I had difficulty was I was being disrespectful to another male, right? And then especially to an elderly, right? And I was like, man, that's so wrong and rude. But I had to get past that because my
Yep.
job was to have emotional labor, right? And
Yep.
have that very, and say that very uncomfortable statement, because it's a statement, it's not a question, right? I'm
Yeah.
not questioning if they had cancer. They told me they did. They're scared of that, right? I'm not questioning that if this person passes away, the other person financially cannot stay in the home. We've looked
Yep.
at their budget. And so it's a statement, and it takes posture, right? And it takes
Dude,
practice.
you beat me to it. I was just about to say that because I could relate to that, bro. I mean, I was 21 years old driving to freaking Delaware, talking to Betty, who's 68, and her husband Joe, both retired, disabled, just got a 30-year mortgage, and I'm the person who's supposed to help them secure their financial future if one of them dies. I had to fake that posture, dude, because I I didn't know. I had what we call unconscious incompetence. I didn't know what I didn't know. And the way that I got good, in addition to training, I mean, I'd literally be listening to Ashley Tarr teach me how to run an appointment as I'm on the way to the appointment. And like I feel like that you guys should do that. Get some training before. But I had to have the posture of, hey, I am the professional. I am licensed. My job is to help you with what you filled out on a form and mailed back and told me you need. And my age is irrelevant. And what's funny is I made it an issue in my mind, but I didn't have a single person, Joe, ask me, how old are you?
Right.
Not one. And so I feel like we create these limitations in our mind with what we think we're not good at. And then that's one of the things that holds us back. And you may have, like, you have to have, it's easier, I feel like now, to have the right posture because we're either talking to them over the phone or on Zoom. And so it's not like your posture, it's not the same as if you're in their kitchen sitting at the dining room table, you know? Um, One thing too, if on the topic of trainings, like SoundCloud's great. There's we had a guy named Jeremy Miner do some training for Symmetry a couple years back. His stuff is phenomenal. They recorded all of it because he does pretty broad sales training, but he did specific for our industry. And if you go into, I don't know where it is now with the new HQ update, but you could probably search NEPQ. It stands for neuro emotional persuasive questioning. And I can give you, if we want to go down this rabbit hole, one of the things that I got really good at that helped my close ratio, Joe, was I got the script memorized. I got good at overcoming objections. If you're not good at that, focus on that. But then it came to, okay, what kind of conversation am I having in the home with the client that is getting them to the point where we're figuring out what they need and want and why, and then we're talking about numbers, they're picking one and we're taking an application. Like, you as the agent, your job is to walk the person through the process of buying. And the way you do that is by asking strategically worded questions. Would you agree, Joe?
No, it's so good, right? Because we teach, right, in influx in your voice, right? And what do you sound like on the other end? Um, and it's that training is so good, right? Go listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a couple of ones that I even like, Elijah, to keep it super simple, right? It was, what do you sound like to them?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what NEPQ is, right? Like, do you sound like you're asking questions or making statements?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And even though sometimes you're asking a question, are you making it sound like a statement? Right? Because yes, it's a question, but again, you have the posture, right? Right? It's you're again poking the bear, right? But you're poking the bear with a statement that's a question. And I think that really helps. One of those, right, that I love to tie NEPQ with, Elijah, is I don't know if you remember this book, was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Yeah. The FBI negotiator. Yep.
That is by far my favorite sales book
Mm-hmm.
because it teaches you to plant seeds through NEPQ and questions.
Yep.
And it teaches you, right, we're negotiating through the entire conversation.
Yeah.
And dude, if you properly implement NEPQ and add, right, the never split the difference tactics, right, of how to get people to respond and put them where you want them, where it's their idea, right? And you'll be amazed of how many more yeses you get, right? Like, it just rains yeses because we're not telling them or convincing anyone, right? It's their idea through the process of the sale. or the presentation, should I say, not even the sell, right? The presentation that we put them through, right? That now it's their idea, right? Like when you perform the NEPQ properly, right, and never split the difference tactics, like at the end, it's almost like we're pushing them. We're even slowing them down, right, Elijah? Like it's like, well, okay, so I know you want this coverage, right? But let's see which one's best for you, right? Because it's like it's their idea now, right? And they feel they're in control.
I can't hear again.
Right. And we are simply just walking them through the process of, right, hey, let's help you find the right program for you. And they're like, okay, but I want to make sure I get coverage, Elijah. Yep. I got
Check this out. One of my favorite questions I got from NEPQ, it's the first question I ask them in the, like, we're on the Zoom, or we're on the phone, we're talking to the client, we're building rapport. When I go into my role and purpose, this is where I'll ask this question. I'll say, Joe, what was your goal for this appointment today? The reason I'm asking is because I want to keep your goal the main thing today. It's getting right up in it. You know what I mean? Like, we're not spending 15 minutes shooting the breeze and then we try to do a quick redirect. Okay, now we're talking about mortgage protection.
right.
You want to have smooth transitions in your conversation, and it'll help you stick on script. But I started asking that, dude, and it helped me just kind of, I don't want to say cut to the chase, but like get down to why we're talking. And it separates me from telemarketers trying to just sell them something they don't need, to asking you, hey, like, what was your goal for this appointment today? And
right. And
yeah.
I want to talk about this too, Elijah, right? Because we went through the process, and I think it's very important to know where you're at in your training, right? Because there is jumping the gun before you, right? Before, like, doing some trainings before you're even ready for that training, if that makes sense.
I totally agree.
Right? Like NEPQ, I love to talk about this, right? Because NEPQ, like the Chris Voss book, I think it's a little, I don't want to say advanced, right? But it's later in the training, right? I think it's very important to talk about what you said earlier, which was let's walk through at least 5 of the basic things we should be doing as a brand new agent, Elijah, that are going to get us to that level, right? Like, hey, how do I at least get to consistent business, right? Because then when you're writing consistent business, you start implementing NEPQ and stuff like this. Now you're writing massive business.
Yeah.
Right. But it's first, let's walk before we run. So obviously it's the script. Yeah. Right. Like memorizing, let's just touch on a little bit difference of, right. We train so many agents, and I think a lot of times it's like, hey, I just have the script here and I have it memorized. And when I say memorize, I can go through it. But then there's a difference of knowing it by heart.
Yep. Do you sound like a robot when you're reading it on the phone, or do you sound like you're having a conversation? Because knowing what it says is one thing, knowing how it's supposed to sound to the person you're talking to is another. And so the second thing I had to get good at, man, was my cadence. I'll never forget, I was dialing, at this time I was a senior in college. I'm dialing in like this group lounge common area. There's students walking around and I'm working on my script. And I'll never forget, I got hung up on like 5 or 6 times in a row, and I'm working bonus leads. And I call Grant, and he's like, well, let's run through the script. And so I start going in it, and he immediately, within 10 seconds, stops. And he's like, whoa. Is that what you sound like when you're calling these people? And I was like, yeah, what's going on? He's like, you're rushing through it. You're talking way too fast. You sound like you're an excited telemarketer. And I was like, what do you mean? And so we worked on my cadence, how you're supposed to sound, the pace of which you read the script. You want to have what Grant described as the late night jazz voice, otherwise known as low and slow. You want to sound like you're bored, monotonous. You got a stack of 100 people to call through. This is kind of the mindset you have to adopt. And your job is just to sort through these leads. And you're not gonna, you shouldn't sound like you're trying to sell them a timeshare in Switzerland when you're calling them and you're so excited about this offer. You want to sound like, hey, I got 50 people I'm calling. I just need to verify this info and go through it. And so I made that one change, Joe, one change on my cadence. And the way you get good at this is by doing it. you got to call your upline. I would suggest that this is another piece of your training is call your mentor before you run an appointment, maybe while you're dialing after you've had 5 or 6 contacts, call them with a question and get real-time feedback. This is how I figured out what I was doing wrong, was calling and finding out that, hey, I shouldn't be speeding through this script as fast as humanly possible. Take your time with it and sound like a person. And
Right.
the result is you book more appointments. That's what happens.
And the nugget there, right? The best way I can teach y'all to do this, and this comes from thousands of training servers. This is where I come from, the restaurant industry. We trained thousands of servers to run a script. They were not allowed to touch a table unless they can recite the entire script. And it was an 8-page script. And they had to know the whole thing by heart, Elijah. If they would have to, we were a manager and they'd come and weigh on us. If they got stopped anywhere in the process, dude, nope, start again. Right. And right, we don't have that, right? Like you have to hold yourself accountable here because you don't have a boss. Right.
Yeah.
So the tip here, 100 times. Go grab your script today and say it 100 times. It will blow you away of how many more appointments you will book if you simply go do that task. Say it in the mirror, say it to your spouse, say it to your dog, like just repeat it over and over. I remember this. I booked an appointment and went to the home and ran it. And we actually ended up hiring her. Right. And she goes, Joe, you were so good on the phone. This is what I imagined. I imagined you in a big chair, leaning back and just talking to me. And I'm like, well, it's funny you say that because that's actually how I dial.
You're
right?
relaxed.
I'm relaxed. Right. And so like if y'all ever see me dialing, right, we're in the dial room and I can be having a whole nother conversation and my thing is ringing, Elijah, and I just jump into script. Right. And it doesn't matter because I know it by heart. I don't have it memorized. That's the difference we want to teach you here. Right. It's amazing the difference because if you have it memorized, guess what they're going to do? They're going to interrupt us anywhere in the process. Right. And then you can't get back to script because you only have it memorized and you have to go back to where you were. Right. Versus we just pick up where we left off. And that's the biggest thing of knowing it by heart, right? So that's the nugget I want to leave y'all there. And I think we move on to the next topic. We're right at the 30-minute mark, Elijah. I want to make sure we're giving nuggets of the things we're doing and where they can plug into. So let's start in order, right? We did the SoundCloud. And James, you feel free to jump in here. Any audios, right, or YouTubes or right podcasts that you would recommend for an agent to plug into, right? And how often do you do it?
I got a podcast I'd recommend. It's done by some of Symmetry's own as well, which is pretty cool. It's called How to Sell Insurance.
That's a good one.
Go check it out. It's Ashton, Grant Lieber, Ryan Federico. It's their podcast. They talk about real stuff. You could go apply. But I can't say enough good about Summit now. Like I've gone through Summit probably 4 or 5 times since it's come out. And each time is you just get it. You get it more in you. You know what I mean? And then I leverage weekly calls. You know, there's so much value in getting training in the middle of your work week that you can go implement the next hour that you're doing another task. And so like I'll get agents reach out to me every now and then, and they have questions and they don't even know that this call exists. Like they're not on it. And I'm like, you're not doing enough for yourself to take initiative and learn how to get good at your craft, because the truth is, Joe, like you're going to get good by training. You're going to get great by going and applying said training. You could spend 15 hours going through Summit, listening to all these audios, reading your script, and then you never call leads and you're not going to know if you're getting better. And so I think that the next component is repetition. Like there's information everywhere. You can go watch stuff on YouTube and plug in all these trainings we're talking about, but you're going to start to get good through experience and by doing the action.
And I want to go back to one thing you said, right? Plugging into calls. And I love this conversation, right? Because we go back and forth in the entire organization, right? Like there's too many calls to plug into. I'm like, man, do y'all understand how many hours we were on our own call, right? In SoundCloud in our head because we were practicing getting better, right? Like I challenge anyone, go, there's not enough calls and enough trainings to get you fast enough there. Right? Like you just got to manage your time and be very good at, hey, when I'm dialing, and we're going to hit on all this, but I want to go to calls, right? So we have a ton of calls and I'm sorry, we have 6 calls. Like if you have an
It ain't that
agency
much.
call, we have a cook call, we have 2 huddles, and then we have our Symmetry one, right? Which is really one. And then we have a production call. And if you're building, you have one more, you have 7, right? Most of them are not an hour long. So it's not even 6 hours worth of work, 6 hours worth of training. And this is what I love to talk about because on the calls, you know what I was always looking for, right? So, okay, a huddle. Like one, we're always bringing some kind of value, but you know what I was looking for, Elijah? I was looking for that leaderboard. Like I was training myself what I can write today and tomorrow. Right? Like today's leaderboard, right? It was 3,000, then it was like, well, it was like 7,000, and then it was like 18,000 or something for the day. That's what I was listening to. And it's funny just how we differently plug in, right? Because are you on the huddle and be like, man, I got to be on this huddle again? Or was I paying attention to what it was training me? And it was training me that somebody can go out there and write $18,000 worth of business yesterday through our system. It was training me. This new agent that just came in a couple of weeks ago or months ago wrote $5,000 yesterday. That's what I was watching, right? And then I took that knowledge and then I said, okay, so how do I get there and who did it? And then it gave me someone to call. Right? Then it gave me someone to plug into. Then it gave me something to go work for because I would make a phone call and they say, hey, I listened to this SoundCloud, or hey, you know what, I'm investing in these type of leads, or hey, you know what, I'm doing this, right? And so I challenge y'all to look at how do you jump on a call, right? Are you going to go learn something, or is it 30 minutes of your time that you're listening to, right? Like even this one, are you on the phone? Are you taking notes? Or are you paying? Are you engaged? Are you actually getting what you want out of this call? There's a 30K a month depositor on here on his own personal pin. Are you 100% focused to get your nuggets out of Elijah
I got a full page of notes.
Come on, James.
Right? and so I challenge y'all in that perspective, right? Like that's where you go find running buddies too. Who else is new in the organization? Who do you want to associate with? Right. And so I love the call part, right? Because so many folks say, I don't need to be on that call. I don't need to be on this call, but yet we're not depositing $15,000 into our bank accounts a
I
month.
was just about to say, bro,
Guess what? You need to be on all these calls.
I dare, yeah. If you're saying, "Oh, I don't need to be on that call," what'd you write last month?
Right?
Were you even in the top 5?
And
Because I guarantee you, the top 5 are on these freaking calls. That's why they're there.
Yeah, right. So if you look at the direct correlation of who's the highest producers and builders, right? And this is just for production alone, they're the ones that are most plugged into every single call. It's not magic, right? But they're the ones taking notes. They're the ones, right, engaging. And like you said, Elijah, grabbing that nugget and applying it, right? So leaderboards is what I highly suggest you to look at, right? Like I get excited to be on the huddle because I want to know what somebody did yesterday. I want to know if they're a brand new agent. I want to know what kind of leads they're taking. I want to know what kind of dials they're doing. That's the challenge I bring to y'all, right? To increase your production through a huddle that sometimes is not felt like a training, right? It just inspired the crap out of me, Elijah, to want to go be better, right?
It's
And then I
changed my
challenge y'all. And then the national call, Elijah, right? Like I can't say enough to that one because that's the one I came in here when I came to the cooker. I'm like, how do I write 15 grand in a week?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm with you there.
So calls, dude, you're giving us that. Let's go into lead investments. What kind of leads are you taking? What do your dials look like? And then what do you do throughout the week to kind of pivot, right? Because we don't always have it's not like by Tuesday we got our $10,000 week already. We pivot a lot. And that's how you stay consistent.
Yeah, man. So let me tell you guys where my lead investment started. Okay. When I was brand new, part-time, I was making like $1,100 a month at the time before I came to Symmetry, full-time college student living at my parents' house. That's what life looked like for me.
Baby
My
Elijah.
first, what's that?
I said, baby Elijah.
That's what they called me. And so I bought 150-cent leads, $50 worth. That's what I started on. I didn't write jack. And so I had to go buy more. And I had a conversation with somebody at conference, and my main takeaway was I'm just not getting enough leads. I'm good enough on the phone. I have the script, but I'm slow playing it and trying to play this not to lose versus play to win. And I was putting in the minimum amount that I was comfortable with.
Say that one more time, buddy.
I was I was playing this not to lose. I wasn't playing this to win. And I was trying to put in the minimum amount of money monthly or weekly that I was comfortable with. And so I was called out of my comfort zone. I think I talked to I think Ben Miller. He was doing a lot of trainings at that conference that I went to, and he was like, dude, you need to bump that up to at least 250 if you're part-time. And I was like, like that was a lot of money for me back then. now I spend that on dinner, and I'm like, this is it. Just perspective changes, dude. So like, I called my dad from conference, and I was like, hey, can I borrow $200? And that's where it started. I paid him back the very next week, and I've never borrowed money since for leads.
And I want to hit on that, right? If you run this like a business and you trust that the system works, you should never buy leads other than once or twice ever. Even though we invest in leads every single week, right? Elijah, I made one. I was blessed to say I made one. I made $178 lead investment out of my personal pocket when I started. That was my first lead investment.
Yeah, got you.
I have never, ever bought leads ever since then because my business has always done it. I wrote my first application. I was super excited because it actually went south and I had to do like UHL and the premium went way up. So it was like a $700 deposit. I was so nervous. Steve Devine helped me so much. I had to go walk back to my car to get a different paper app for UHL to write that puppy. It was horrible. I messed everything up. But I got my $700 deposit. And next lead investment was like 200. The next one was like 250. The next one was like 150 again, right? But yeah. I never pulled out of my pocket again because I have always ran it like a business. I can't say this. Your first $2,000 in commissions is not yours. Do not touch it. Leave it in your account because that is your revolving business lead investment. And if you do that properly, you get to go so much faster too.
Yeah.
Right. And so kind of hit on that because you did it the slow way, right? But then you came back from conference and you understood that, right? Yeah. So you invested your leads, you paid your dad back, and then what did it look like afterwards? Because then you were able to go faster.
The very next month, so I put this in the chat too. This is kind of like my claim to fame story. My biggest month before conference was $2,100 in premium for the month. 2 apps. One got approved, and so like it was not good. Go to conference, learn what I need to know, make the changes, buy more leads. In September, still part-time, I go out and I sell 17 grand. And I'll never forget, I came like at the end of that month, I was talking to my mom and I was like, Mom, I made $8,000. This is crazy. What am I doing? And so now what it looks like is I'm trying to invest as much as I can, dude. So like I put in $850 to $1,000 a week in leads. Last month, there was 1 week I spent $1,400 because there was a bunch of A-leads in inventory. And so I was like, let me just go ahead and gobble these up. I wrote over 12 grand that week. And so when you buy leads, you have to recognize like it's the math of it is you're buying your production. If you spend $200 on leads, you might write 2 grand if you're good. The more you spend, the more that you have more chances at bat to get a home run. You know, the more leads you have, the more conversations you have. The more conversations you have, the fuller your calendar is. The more appointments you have on your calendar, the more qualified appointments you're running. The more presentations you do, the more business you write. And so when I learned that math, it's like my wife calls it girl math. whenever she buys something. She's like, it makes sense. When you buy leads, if you work them, it always pans out. And so my lead mix last month, here's my numbers. I spent $4,100 on leads for the month. $4,100 lead build. Like, what is that a year, Joe? Like when you put it like that, it's like, dang, that sounds like a lot, but almost a 10x return on the advance. Like I got deposited 75% of what I made, y'all. So like I made more than that. I'm going to get the rest in month 10. And so 4,100 leads, the way that shook out was it was 177 leads total. I looked at my opt, 177. That mixture is a pretty diverse mixture, all mortgage protection, but I was taking 10 lighthouse leads a week. I was taking MIB leads, MIC leads, call-ins, CIB leads because they're 50% off. And I even took some EXB leads for the first time, whatever those are, mortgage protection digital leads, I think.
And I want to hit on that, right? Like so many people are caught up on, I'm on the wrong lead. I'm on bonus leads. I'm on lighthouse leads. I'm on CI leads. I'm on A leads. Like a lead is a lead. You just need someone.
That's all I took last month. The 177 in those 8 categories, but all mortgage protection. The only difference people you gotta understand is just how new is that lead. That's really it. And a CIC lead is a call-in lead that's 4 weeks old. And so like understanding that it'll shape your perspective of it. They're all people who filled out a request for mortgage protection or life insurance. And so,
and I want to go back to the original numbers, right? Like, please, y'all write this down because this is how you make money here. Every 250 you invest a week in leads makes you $1,000. Every $250 you invest in leads makes you $1,000. Now you got to go do all the right stuff, get trained, and that's what we're talking about today, right? But do you truly understand that? Because when Mark Newbauer told me that, my brain instantly went the other way, Elijah.
how much can I buy?
It went, can I go to 500 to make 2,000? Can I go to 750 to make 3,000? Can I get to 1,000 to make 4,000? Is that what you're telling me, Mark? I literally told him like that. Even I'm almost upset because I didn't believe it. I'm like, so you're telling me $1,000 in leads makes me 4,000 next week?
Because it sounds crazy. It
Right?
sounds too good. Like what investment or slot machine can you go in and trade hundreds for 20s? It's literally turning your cell phone and some sweat equity into cash out of thin air. Like it's wild. We get paid to talk to people from home.
And I love that you told us 4,100 is what you invested for the month.
For the
And
month.
I
I
love
should
that
have
you
did
asked,
that for the week. After hearing that call yesterday, that's what my new
right?
weekly investment's about to look like.
And you said, what is that a year, right? And I want everyone to know these numbers. So in 2019, my first full year, I deposited 240, it was like $45,000, 245,000 in deposits in 2019 into my bank account, my own personal PIN. Listen to this number, Elijah. I invested $36,000 in leads.
Pretty good.
Right? Now that sounds scary. 36, that's what I made a year.
Yeah, literally.
In my prior career.
This is some,
and now we're teaching y'all, right? $36,000 in leads. That was the only magic, right? And so I still made over 200,000 free and clear net, right? After my $36,000 lead investment. So I challenge y'all, right? Like your business is going to be on, right? Hamburgers, right? If I only bring in 5 pounds of hamburger meat for the year, well, guess what? Your sales are going to be really low. If you bring in 100,000 pounds of hamburger meat, you're going to have a ton of sales.
Yeah.
And you got to understand that concept because that's what Elijah did. He just invested a lot more. Now you got to put in the work, right? So I want to let's go into dial, sits, and counsel, right? Because I love to say this to new agents so a lot of y'all, right? Raise your hand if y'all have said, hey, I want to go have a massive week or I want to go have a massive month. Right? Write these 3 things down because this is all you really have to do. Okay? You have to dial more. You have to sit with more. and you have to counsel more. And the counsel is the tough one because your ego's in the way. I promise you, right? We're sitting with families and we're not talking about it because, hey, you know what, Elijah, I'm not going to call you about this last sit I just did because I didn't follow the script.
I never got the FIF.
Yeah, I didn't do the FIF, right? So we don't counsel because our ego's in the way because we didn't do it properly.
Yeah.
And so, dude, dig into what your dials look like, what your sits look like, and what do you do for counseling? Who do you call, right? And I think a lot of times we confuse counseling as I'm gonna talk to my upline and get punished, right?
Oh,
Versus I'm gonna have a running buddy that I'm gonna talk to about how my appointment went,
yeah. I
right?
think
Because that's counsel too. So give us some nuggets there.
real quick, if you're ever scared to call your upline, that's just like, I'm sorry that you dealt with a previous work experience that gave you that gut reaction, because people are not like that here. You should never feel anything negative about calling your upline. Their job is to help you and they want to. So that's something I had to get over with. And when I was new, there was some days I would call Grant 12 times in a day, just to put that into perspective. Not to complain and gripe about leads sucking or whatever, but with questions, it's how you get good. But anyways, here's what my activity looks like, and what I'm doing, and also what counseling looks like for me at this point. I'll go through my week to week numbers for last month, if you guys want to jot these down. So week 1, 448 dials, 52 contacts, 22 appointments booked. I ran 14 that week, 14 conversations. Week 2, 342 dials, 33 contacts, 27 appointments, 15 ran. So my show rate was garbage that week, like 50%. And so, but my close ratio was solid. Week 3, 370 dials, 40 contacts, 28 appointments, 16 ran. And then week 4, 281 dials. We had a light week, 34 contacts, 17 appointments, 10 ran. And then the last week of the month, 310 dials, 38 contacts, 23 appointments, 16 ran. The grand total was I ran 71 appointments last month. I guarantee you I ran more than anybody else on our team. I don't even need to look at their activity. I just know it because of the amount of apps that I have. And so I didn't do anything special. I just did more. And the way I figured that out, Joe, was when we got back from Switzerland for the AmAm trip, I had lost momentum production wise. I basically worked 1 week in June and I went out of the country twice. And so I came back kind of feeling the pressure. Oh man, we got conference right around the corner. I have 0 pending business. I've been out of town, I spent over 10 grand on travel that month. And so I was like, I need to make some money. And so I called Rex Knight, such a good dude. I called Rex Knight and I was like, hey, what do you suggest? And we talked for a few minutes and he's like, honestly, man, I think you should just do more of what you're doing. He's like, it seems simple to me. Buy more of the leads that you're getting and work Saturdays. And so I increased my lead investment because I wasn't doing $1,000 a week. I was doing just under 800. I'd also made the mistake of canceling my Lighthouse lead order before I left the country. So I came back not having leads to work, having spent a bunch of money and oh man, I got to drop $1,000 on leads now. I made a mistake. So I called Chris as well. Chris and I had a conversation and he told me something similar. He's like, why don't you just commit to running 15 appointments a week? Because last year, him and I counsel every year. We look at my numbers for the year. Last year, Joe, I averaged 7.8 sits per week. 7.8. I wasn't even part-time, brother. I was just screwing around and I still managed to sell 350. So he was like, imagine what you could do if you just commit to doing 15 appointments. And so I made those 2 changes. I bought more leads. This was right around the time that they added all these new bonus lead categories that took me a little bit to figure out, but basically they're just bonus leads that are newer, y'all. They're better now. If you're curious what the change means for you, is they're cheaper than they were before and they're fresher. So go stock up, and they're 50% off for CIBs. And I made the commitment. I told a couple people what I was going to be doing. I have a running buddy in a totally another agency that we're not even in the same hierarchy, but we talk almost daily and check in. I'm in a couple group chats with agents that I met while we were in Switzerland, and we talk and we keep each other accountable. What'd you write today? How many appointments you guys set? How much did you spend on leads? We'll give each other crap if we spend less than 1,000. We're smack talking like you need to bump that up to at least 2,000. And one of my buddies, Jake Van Dusen, he wins every freaking carrier trip out there. The dude works 90% bonus leads, y'all. Bonus leads, and he's spending over $1,000 a week. And like that's the common theme between people who are really doing this at like a high level of excellence, in my opinion. And you shouldn't come here wanting to be average. They said it on the last call. Casey Watkins, you guys know what an average agent does in this company? They quit. The average agent doesn't even stick around. You don't want to be average. Like you want to do what the top tier people are doing. And it sounds like a lot at first. If somebody at my first conference said, Elijah, go buy $1,000 of leads, I was like, buddy, I got to call my dad for 200. Like I don't have it. And so it takes starting where you're at and then working your way up from there. Like if you can afford 250, go do 250, and then your first sale that you make from that 250, double your lead investment, and then do it that way. And you can literally get to the point, Joe, you can go buy leads today, call them today, book appointments for tomorrow, write business on them tomorrow, and have money in your bank account courtesy of Mutual of Omaha by Monday.
Crazy.
It's insane. I wrote an app yesterday with Mutual of Omaha and I got paid on it today. It's insane. And so if you're scared to invest in leads, I would just challenge your mindset a little bit and get resourceful, because we're all entrepreneurs here. You're an employee of one and you have a volunteer army with your team. And the best way to get that army moving forward is you do the things that are being taught. You have to lead yourself first, and your results will greatly impact your posture when you run the appointment, your confidence. I'm not scared to invest in leads or make dials because I have the results to back the things that I'm doing. If that
So
makes sense.
last 5 minutes, we're just going to recap all the nuggets. So make sure y'all have these written down, right? These are the things you should be doing throughout the week. That's going to help increase how many families you help, how much deposits. So first on training, we're all going to national conference, right? It's the keys to where to go. It would disappear. Keys to top to a top producer in production, 40K in 60 days.
That's
Right?
gonna be
And these are for production, right? Make sure you counsel with your upline, because right, if you're looking at building and stuff, you'll have different classes, but for production, that's a highly recommended class. How to write 40,000 in 60 days. The next one is the phones. There's 2 of them, right? Making sure, right? One of them is,
I think it's called the script.
it is the secrets to stress-free objection handling. And where'd it go? Why did it disappear? And it's mastering the phone somewhere in there.
I think it's how to overcome fear.
Overcoming fear of the phones. Yeah.
That's the one. The next one is post-sales. That's going to be good. The
Yeah.
post-sale process, right? Because it's going to teach you to get ASRs, which are after sales referrals, how to get FIF resets, policy delivery, lock in your business, making sure you're getting your deposits. And which one's the secret? Yep, that's it. So national, right? Conference, those are trainings you want to plug in for production. And write this down. I can't say this enough, right? Like, how do I look at lead investment and activity, and how do I correlate the two to win? Either you invest $1,000 in leads, or you dial 1,000 dials.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's 1,000 either way. Do you have the $1,000 in leads, or guess what? You got plenty of time. I promise you, to dial 1,000 dials. 1,000 dials divided by 33 or 35 dials an hour is only 28.5 hours. Are you working 28.5 hours a week to dial? That's not even part-time, right? 28 and a half hours is $1,000. So either I got $1,000 in leads or I got 1,000 dials in activity, right?
That's the
You'll
fast
figure
track
out
to success with it.
that, right? That you'll figure it out from there. And just remember, every 250 makes me $1,000. So if you invested this week 150, well, guess what? You're not even promised $1,000.
Mhm.
That's the reality of it, right? Like no one said you were going to go score every single time, right? And then, so write that one down, right? $1,000 or 1,000 dials. Then right after that, right, is every $250 I invest in leads makes me 1,000. Know that. I promise you it works. Over 6 weeks. 1 week you may not write business. The next week you'll write 3 or 4 apps. It's not going to happen every single week consistently. It's after a 6-week look back. I promise you the numbers will align. What am I doing for the week? I'm dialing more, sitting more, and counseling more. I can't. There's too many people out there in Symmetry that will help you in our organization. Do not try to go figure this out by yourself. The next one, what are you doing to plug in training? SoundCloud audios, podcasts, again, get with your upline so we can help counsel which ones we think are best for you. But you should be training 1 to 2 hours a day as well. That's what we did because we had to drive. So we had to have the rolling university, but you can't expect to I love this call, but you can't expect this one call to hold you over for the next week in training.
Yeah.
You're going to go really slow. So daily, what are you plugging in for some kind of training? SoundCloud audio is the best, 1 to 2 hours in the morning, in the evening, not during dial time, right? Not during 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Like you should be dialing, booking appointments, running appointments. Outside of that is when you get that hour or 2 of training. Now, guess what? You can go above and beyond and go listen to 4 hours a day, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. It's just going to make you go faster. The next one is call in the home. You should never get, when you sit with a family, you should never get off that Zoom or off the phone if you're not going to get the sale without calling your upline. You should call every single time you think that appointment's not going to go through. We are there to help. I promise you, sometimes just a phone call, yep, that's the right program. Well, I guess I'll do it. Like it works so well. I promise you, I have a system in place. You don't get upset if your upline doesn't answer because you didn't tell them you were in an appointment, right? Like you got to prep. We have our agents tell us, hey, I'm about to walk in an appointment. And if I have an appointment, I'm like, hey, James, you be ready. Inside of every organization, they can help you prepare, right? So you have someone to call. Don't just randomly call your upline, hey, I'm in an appointment right now. I need some help.
You know what Edward Pritchett says? Edward Pritchett says, your lack of preparation does not constitute an emergency.
Yeah. I love it. That's good. And then, right, Never Split the Difference is a great book.
Yeah.
And Go for No. If you haven't read those 2 books, those are what you need for production, right? One will teach you to negotiate with folks and drop some big anchors, because why I say drop big anchors is if you find yourself not writing big policies, I promise it's because you're showing small policies, right? Guess y'all want to know why we have 7,000, 18,000, right? $10,000 APV policies is we just show big apps, right? So you got to learn to negotiate and not be scared to show those big apps, because trust me, if you do a proper appointment, they'll see the value in it and they'll want it. So this is recorded. We'll post it on Band. Again, any nuggets that help you, please post on there. Thank y'all for hopping on. Thank you, Elijah.
Happy to help.